When I was a little boy, I wanted to be an airline pilot. My friend George Day is in the room. He's an airline pilot. He assures me that it's not nearly as romantic as I used to think it was. But I just thought as a child, you could fly. You know, you're obsessed with Superman, and then you're flying in the plane, and you make all these connections, and I just wanted to be an airline pilot. And my dad used to travel for his job back then, and he'd come home, and he'd do the one knee, hey, Daddy's home, and I'm like, yeah, it's great, where's my flight magazine? And I would take it, and I would memorize I grew up in South Africa, and would memorize the fleet of South African Airways, as well as the seating configurations. You all are kind of judgy, you need to dial it down. For those in the room who have traveled with me, they know that when we're waiting for boarding, if we're on Southwest Airlines, I got my Seat Guru app, trying to find the best spot to sit. So I'm still obsessed with seating configurations of airlines. There's only one real problem, and that's like, I'm a pretty nervous flyer. 30 seconds ago, I said, dial the judgment down, and there it is again. So I'm a pretty nervous flyer, and so this is what a typical travel experience looks like for me, because I like going places, I like seeing new things, but we're all very excited, and then we get to the airport and open the car door in the parking garage, and two things just completely overwhelm my senses. The smell of jet fuel and the sound of jet engines, and I can feel just right here my anxiety spike. And then we walk into the terminal, and my anxiety spikes again, and then we get into that TSA line, and my anxiety spikes again, and then I clear the security checkpoint, and my anxiety spikes a couple of more times, because now I realize that if I chicken out like I really want to, and get on that side of security and realize, oh, I really have to go, that it probably is a more private and strict security search to get through the checkpoint for the second time in 15 minutes, if you know what I'm saying. So my anxiety spikes a couple of times. We go up the escalator, we get to the gate, and I see the plane, and my anxiety spikes. And I know what you're thinking, where else can your anxiety go, boy? Many more places. Just hang in there with me. And so they call us for boarding, and I can just feel the tension. And at this point, you know when you're nervous and you're hot, you feel like the heat's trying to escape from your head? Any of you have that? Yeah, so that's what I'm doing, right? And so we get down the jetway, and I can see the plane, and I just, I'm like praying the whole time walking down the jetway. Because even though I understand the physics, reconciling the reality that 600,000 pounds of metal can float, it's really hard for me at that point. I'm like having a physics argument with myself in the jetway. So we get in the plane, you get in my seat, and I buckle my seatbelt, and then I'm having, I'm like flirting with having a panic attack at this point, okay? Just, I'm breathing really fast and shallow. And my wife's nice enough to let me fly with you. For you oily people, she sends the peace and calming with me. And I'm like, on the wrists, the temples, the neck. I'm not covering all of the bases. Praying, crossing myself, begging the Lord that he would just get me there safely, because I don't want to go. And they push back from the gate, and then they do the safety briefing, which, by the way, if you fly a lot, you don't care about, but if you're a nervous flyer, it scares you. Why do I need to know that my seat's going to float between here and Nashville? So we push back, and then we turn at the end of the runway. And so we fly Southwest Airlines a lot. And so at Love Field, for those of you who've used it there, they got the sign that says use noise abatement procedure. And for the pilots and the aviation geeks in the room, you know that means it's going to be fast, it's going to be steep, in about a minute, and he's going to cut power. Which, if you have flying issues, just sweat is like streaming down my face. I don't read books at airplanes because my hands are so wet that it actually ruins the pages. I read like on electronic devices. And I have like headphones on. I'm like, what's the loudest, most obnoxious music I can listen to right now? And I read and I listen because I'm trying to overwhelm my senses. And then when that thing goes, I can feel myself being pushed back in my seat. And as it rotates and starts to climb, every ounce of gravity that aircraft is fighting against is being centered on my chest, and I can't breathe. My wife and I had to go to Nashville a couple of years ago. And on the flight on the way to Nashville, it was in that kind of smooth, so I was okay. And about 4 rows in front of us, a guy choked. He was a big guy, almost my size, and so the people on the row with him pushed him up into the aisle, and the flight attendant came running down, and she did the Heimlich, or whatever we're supposed to call it now. She does this procedure on him and dislodges whatever was blocking his airway, and kind of kneels there by him, tensed him for a few minutes, and goes on her way. So when we got back from Nashville, I saw my parents, and my dad said, "How was your trip?" And I said, I didn't tell him anything about the trip. I just told him about the choking incident on the plane. And he turned his head and he looked at my mother across the room and he said, hey, do you remember that time that Ryan choked when he was about 2 or 3 years old on an airplane? When they had to dislodge the food blocking his airway and help him? And I said, why didn't you tell me this? He's like, I didn't feel like it was important. My dad's sort of a grunt communicator more than sort of a narrative one. So Melanie Chung Sherman, many of you know Melanie. So I saw Melanie a couple of days ago and I told her the story and I said, do you think that's why I'm afraid to fly? And she said, yes, of course that's why you're afraid to fly, because your body has come to believe this firmly held narrative that bad things happen to you on airplanes. You're not having a panic attack. You just are at the most heightened state of alertness that your body will allow because you know something bad's about to happen and you're just waiting. The next time I flew after that, we're walking down the aisle of the plane, Kayla and I, and here sitting on an aisle seat is Melanie Chung Sherman with 2 seats next to her. I don't know how many of you have flown with your therapist before. It's exhilarating. So we talked through a lot of like, how you feeling, how you doing, kind of processing it, because the body keeps score, right? The body remembers what the mind forgets. And so I'm happy to say that I can actually fly now without the essential oils, without panicking. I went to Atlanta last week with a friend, and he told somebody last night, Ryan did just fine. I didn't even have to distract him on takeoff because I was made aware of an issue, and somebody who is gifted and equipped helped me process that issue. We went to Orlando for CAFO Summit this year, and because it was in Orlando, we took all 6 of our children with us to go to Disney World. So yes, you can judge me now, because that is a special kind of stupid. 6 kids on an airplane to go to Disney. My daughter, Brooklyn, she's like the daddiest of daddy girls, right? I mean, think of what a daddy girl means, and then like multiply that by 10, and that's how Brooklyn is. And so she had to sit next to me on the plane. She was 7 at the time and had never flown before. And so she was really, really, really excited until we buckled the seatbelts. And she buried her head in my arm, and started sobbing and said, Daddy, I can't do this. And then I thought, oh, there's a line of people coming down the aisle. Because Jason Weber is a sadist, I have to be at the church at 7 a.m. in Orlando in the morning. And I can't send Kayla to Disney with the 5 other children. There is no escape option here for us. I've got to help Brooklyn through this. And so I did the only 3 things I knew. I snapped my fingers like some kind of surgeon and said, peace and calming across the aisle to Kayla. And put it on, and put the headphones on, and told her to play Minecraft. And it distracted her for a while until the safety briefing. Why are we going to need a mask, Daddy? It's fine, you're not going to need a mask. Go back to Minecraft. And then the plane turned at the bottom of the runway, and he accelerated, and off we went. And she said, is this it? And I said, no, baby, we're still on the ground. And then the plane rotated and took off. She said, is this it? And I said, why don't you look out the window? She was sitting in the middle. She leaned across her sister and looked out. And at that point, he kind of banked to the right, and she could see everything below her. And she went, we're flying. And I said, yeah, isn't that fun? And we proceeded without incident. It was a pretty calm flight. So she her confidence grew, and she had traded seats with one of her siblings and was sitting behind me as we started our approach into Orlando. And the pilot came on, and he said something really, really good. Guys, it's clear weather with about 5 degrees out of the south in Orlando, so it's just going to be great when we get there. And then he said something really, really evil. The only problem with that is that between Orlando and us is a thunderstorm that we need to get through. So I'm going to ask the flight crew to sit down. I'm going to ask all of you to sit down, buckle your seatbelts, and we're just going to do the best we can to get you there as fast as we can. And my anxiety spikes. But not for me, for Brooklyn, who was sobbing 2 hours ago on the ground in Dallas. And then we hit the bad weather, and the plane just started shaking and doing left, right, and up, down. It did all the moves. And behind me, I heard Brooklyn scream, wee. This is just like a roller coaster. Now, that is at best a cute story. But the point of my story is this. That if I was not made aware of my issues, and sought the help that I needed to process my issues, I would never, ever have been any use to Brooklyn when she needed me that day. Because she would today be afraid of flying if her father didn't get help to process his past. Kayla and I went to South Africa before we had kids, which seems like a million years ago now. And we're flying from Dallas to London, and so we're sitting right in like the bulkhead, and there's a flight attendant facing us, and she can see that I'm in distress as we leave DFW. And she starts talking to me, and she says, "You don't seem like you are enjoying this." And I said, "Oh, it's that obvious." She said, "You know, I used to be afraid of flying." I said, "Interesting career choice." She said, "I was afraid of flying until I was about 17 years old when I realized that I actually wasn't afraid of flying. My mother was terrified of flying, and when I flew with her as a child, I thought that's what you were supposed to do." Remember that we all got stuff, and we got stuff we got to work through. There is no shame sitting in the counselor's office. There's no shame in talking to your friends and being transparent, because if you don't work through the things that are from your past, the shackles that bind you, you're never going to be able to be the person who can be completely present and help your child heal the way God intended you to. One of my favorite quotes for Dr. Purvis, I'll leave you with this. You cannot show a child the path to healing if you yourself do not know the way. Thank you.